strangely, I'm going to introduce myself because I'm going to now do the first presentation. I'm going to talk to you about feminist organising and what I know about it. I'm the coordinator of WDI, and I was there at the beginning setting it up with a couple of other women. And I think my first tip for anybody who wants to do feminist organising is to just simply start. Just get started. Most things that I've attempted to do have failed. And I did set up and run with a collective or a group of young women a feminist magazine called Shocking Pink, which was based in London in the 1980s. And there was a loose collective of young women between the ages of 14 and 24. And we ran a magazine for about 12 issues in the late 1980s. That was reasonably successful. But many of the things that I've done have been a failure. Like I set up a thing called Fempo. And what we did is we met in a local pub, and it was basically me and a friend of mine. And she has always said that she really likes hanging out with me, and she'll basically do whatever I want. So in order to hang out with me, she'll be involved in anything. And the problem with that is that she's not that feminist, and she really just wanted to have a chat, whereas I'm rabidly very, very vehement feminist. And we had a problem. She's quite into knitting, so we did this action which was untangling the patriarchy, unraveling the patriarchy, and we got our father's jumpers. But of course I was the only one who actually did that. Not, well, maybe not, of course, but I got my father's jumper, and we unraveled it because she's quite into knitting. So we tried to join knitting with overthrowing the patriarchy. But that really was a massive failure because it was very incoherent, because I wanted to overthrow the patriarchy and my friend wanted to do knitting. So again, another thing I've done that's been a failure, I did a thing called WAC, Watford Against Climate Change. And basically it was just me and this friend again, and we chatted about trying to do things about climate change. And strangely, this was about 5 years ago, or maybe 7 years ago, there was this guy who kept on saying he wanted to come to our meetings, called Christopher Broom. And then we would think, well, what's he doing? Why is he coming to our meetings? And he wanted to know absolutely everything we were doing about climate change. And then I sort of thought, this is very suspicious. He's coming from Sheffield, he says, and he just says he happens to be around, but he was making notes about what we were doing. And then every now and then when we stopped meeting, because it was a failure and nobody came apart from me and my friend, he used to phone me up and say, I just want an updated report. I want to know what you're doing. And I sort of told him, and then I just said, oh, we're not doing anything. And then I sort of thought, well, he's probably a spy. Like, he's probably getting 50 quid, 50 pounds every time he sends in a report of what WAC is doing. But it was such a failed group anyway. So, right, that's the one thing. Just start. Don't worry if it's a failure. Next one. Now, when we did WDI, Women's Declaration International, it did work, and I think it's a success. One tip is ask for help. Tell women what you are planning to do and ask for ideas. So a way that I did that is I went to a Swedish radical feminist camp. I went to and I said to every single woman there, I went around and talked to everybody. There were about 120 women there, and said, hello, I'd like to talk to you about this idea that we could do a global action against gender identity ideology. And I explained what we were planning to do and asked for their ideas, and also got their emails. And significant numbers of our country contacts came from face-to-face chats that I had, and ideas and networking with women at that radical feminist camp. I think it was 2019, but not sure the exact date. It might have been another year around then. Now, that's another tip, is we're doing so much, we're so busy, it's difficult to always be completely accurate on everything. Now, some people are accurate and get every single word right, and that we need women like that, but I'm not. So in this case, I just don't know which year it was. Somebody might know. There are loads of you, quite a few of the people here will have been there. Okay, so ask for help. I also went to Fair Play for Women, handing out leaflets in my town, and talked to the women there, and met Bernadette, who does the tech on these webinars. We found that we had very similar views. We get on, and she has a very can-do attitude and has amazing tech skills. So by talking and saying, I'm thinking of doing this thing, and she's very positive, she just went, yeah, I can do bits of that, let's do it. But you know, of every 10 people you talk to, most of them are going to not really want to do it, or they're going to be busy or whatever, but some of them will want to do it. So talk to people a lot. Now, another tip for organizing: do what you're good at, want to do, and if possible, do what you're good at. So I can speak sort of 4 languages. And I worked in Brussels as a lobbyist on international institutions, so the EU, but also a bit towards the UN. So I thought, right, if I'm going to be effective, I'm going to do what I'm good at, which is something to do with at least vaguely speaking other languages and being able to hear people and know that. And also international work. I've done that. I understand how to link internationally. So that would be a useful thing. If you're organizing, do what you can do and also what you want to do. So I wanted to do this, so that's great. The other thing is being in the area of radical feminism. I've been reading radical feminist texts since the 80s. And one example of that would be Janice Raymond's The Transsexual Empire. Some of these understandings take years to sort of sink in, and you read them and you think, yeah, that makes sense, but then it takes years to become really embedded in your life. And so I think that that's a sort of great if you have got an expertise that you've had for a long time. Obviously, many are new to this, so fair enough, you can't have read something years ago if you didn't read it. Linked to that, what you want to do is also linked up to what you're driven to do. And I'm motivated very strongly by anger at the patriarchy, and that gives me huge amounts of energy to do it. You know, I'm completely livid about it. So it makes me pleased and happy to be doing this work because I'm doing what my emotions are telling me to do, which is fighting to overthrow the patriarchy. Now, another thing is joy. So having read Mary Daly, she talks about, and lots of women talk about, how we also have joy by being part of feminist communities, women's communities. And so for me, there are lots of moments of joy being part of what Mary Daly called meta-patriarchy, being outside patriarchy. And I believe we are creating and have created a meta-patriarchal space in these spaces that aren't controlled by men, where there is sisterhood. So that's joy, as well as being pushed by anger. Top tip: work with women. Don't work with men. I've worked with men. I'm sure lots of you know this anyway. Some of you maybe don't agree with that, but having worked with men, my main experience is being stabbed in the back, wasting lots of time. They say that they are helping, but they basically just mostly want to get a girlfriend. It's just, and may, you know, like, or get you out of the way, or they get pleasure in destroying you, but they don't say they're going to. So that's top tip: work in women-only organizations. Next one: have a written purpose, a common vision that clarifies what you are aiming for. Now, we are incredibly lucky in Women's Declaration International to have the Declaration on Women's Sex-Based Rights, which is nearly 7,000 words long. We are unbelievably fortunate to have had it written by women, Maureen O'Hara, Sheila Jeffries, with some help from Heather Brunskill Evans, and about a dozen women who were in a sort of discussion group around the world. So we got ideas from all over the world. We've got this fantastic document that is informed and guided by many, many, many years of intense feminist activism. So this is not something that women new to feminism have written. This is the combined wisdom of, you know, the last half a century or more. Now, we're really lucky to have that, because then anyone who signs the declaration has a clear we have a clear vision, and anybody who doesn't sign it, we know we don't want to work with. So as an organization, we have a purpose, a common vision, and it clarifies what our common politics. Now, the Vancouver Rape Relief Organization, Crisis in Vancouver, in Canada, they also work like that. And they're one of the organizations that has stood the test of time to maintain a fantastic radical feminist vision. What they do is they have a written purpose that they all have to sign up to. They have a common vision, and they when I spoke with them, when actually we were setting up our organizational structure, I spoke with them. They said that they get volunteers to read some books, and they discuss the books with them. They're radical feminist books, and then they can move forward together with a common purpose. So that's really useful, and that's worked very well. Now, related to that, another tip is this: is if you can't do something, like I sort of thought this would be great if we had a declaration, and other women were thinking about along the same lines. So Sheila Jeffries, Heather Brunskell-Evans, they were mulling about talking, and other women as well were talking about we should make something. Now, the thing that I did, I couldn't write it, partly because I don't know enough about those bits of UN conventions and human rights law, etc. But what I could do is I could encourage others to do it. And what I did is I spent time linking the women who could write it and encouraging them to, well, getting them, and which they wanted to do, to come to meetings. And I think I stimulated them to some extent to write it by sending a first draft, which is basically I just cut and pasted part of the Beijing Platform for Action and said, we could just use this. And then they were so horrified with how bad it was that they were spurred into action. And then after that, basically, I just bought cups of tea and chocolate for them and encouraged them and set up meetings. Now, you don't need to do everything, and you certainly don't need to do things you can't do. But if you can find people and work with women who can do the things, and you can help them in different ways, because we're all different, so we've all got different skills. So that's a tip. Okay, have clear boundaries and don't try to please everyone. Don't try to do everything. I get emails because I have the info@womensdeclaration.com email almost every day from women and men asking us and me to do things that are not going to help the Declaration on Women's Sex-Based Rights. So they want to put some advertising on our website, or they might want us to help them connect their aunt with their long lost daughter, or they might want to understand a part of radical feminist theory. None of those things are our fundamental purpose, and they might all be good things, but they're not, or they might not, but they're not our purpose. And so have boundaries, just decide what you're going to do and accept that you have to say no to people, and that's that you can't help everybody. Some people might be upset. Now, one other thing related to people being upset is that my experience of feminist activism is that almost very, very, very often when you get involved in feminism, there's quite a lot of conflict. So what people have written about it being horizontal violence, but it seems sort of such a shame that we would be in a women's organization and then people attack us, or other women attack us. But my experience is that happens, and that pretty much every time I've been involved in women's organizations, there are sort of random attacks on me or other people and big arguments. Now, I've just totally expect that, and it does help to sort of expect it. So I went to a French feminist webinar a while ago, and I warned the women I was going with who are new to feminism we might be attacked, which didn't happen too much, but it was better to be reliable than be perfect. So I'm very committed to running these webinars every week, if at all possible, or because I think reliability is really important in terms of organizing. Collect emails and build a network, be creative and use new technology. So another tip is it is really important to get people's emails, because then we can actually be in touch with each other and be generous with our sharing of those, that the fact that we have those emails, apart from not obviously complying with GDPR, but to share information. And then using new technology, using Zoom has been fantastic for us. And I think that it is an opportunity. So I would say for organizing, it's good. Take your feminist organizing seriously. It is serious. Organizing is serious. It's important that women do all sorts of things: writing, thinking, activism on the streets, which we're into as well. But whatever you end up doing, be serious about it, I would say. And the last thing I would say is sisterhood is more powerful than money and patriarchy. So I suggest it's not worth it running after getting loads of money. I think that can backfire. And I do believe that we can overthrow patriarchy. So that's a sort of nice attitude. Good. And I think it's worth it having that. And then final thing is pace yourself. I do other things and spend quite a lot of time looking after myself and sort of trying to enjoy myself, but take my mind off this feminist stuff because it's so grim in parts of it. And I think that for organizing, that's a really important thing for everybody to do. So thank you for listening to my ideas about organizing, and I hope they're helpful.